Hello, all creative people. My name is Tina Sharapova, and I am a textile designer and an art teacher. And now we are at the 5th week of our artistic challenge, Inspiration is Here. And today I will tell you about the artist who created the first abstract piece of art, the leader of a new art movement, Василий Кандинский. He was born in Moscow, Russia, in a rich family of a tea merchant, and he spent most of his childhood in Odessa, on the south of Russia, now it's Ukraine. And he got a good education, he had art classes and music classes, he played cello and piano, and following his parents' advice, he went to the Moscow University to study law. And he was a successful student. By the age of 30, he got an offer for a professorship in Delft University, now it's Tartu, Estonia, but he refused, because by that time he decided to dedicate himself to art and become an artist. There must be various reasons why he decided to change his life. But one of them was an exhibition of Claude Monet in Moscow, where he saw haystacks and was impressed by its colors and art technique. At first he found it hard to recognize the shapes, but the painting itself had such an impact on his ideas about art that he even described it later in his books. Another event that impressed Kandinsky was a performance of Richard Wagner's Lohengrin in Bolshoi Theater. Kandinsky was a synesthetic, so he associated sounds with colors and literally can see the music. He described it like that.
Yellow is the color of middle C on a brassy trumpet. Black is the color of closure and the end of things, and that combinations of colors produce vibrational frequencies akin to chords played on a piano.
And in his book, concerning the spiritual in art, Kandinsky writes,
Color directly influences the soul. Color is the keyboard, the eyes are the hammers, the soul is the piano with many strings. The artist is the hand that plays, touching one key or another purposefully, to cause vibrations in the soul. Lend your ears to music, open your eyes to painting, and stop thinking. Just ask yourself whether the work has enabled you to walk about into a hitherto unknown world. If the answer is yes, what more do you want?
It took Kandinsky many years to develop his own style of these abstract paintings. In 1896, Kandinsky left Moscow for Munich, that was considered to be one of the European art centers. And he entered the private school of art to learn the basics on composition, working with a point and line. In 3 years, Kandinsky entered the Munich Academy of Arts, and his teacher, Franz von Stuck, who was considered to be a German graphic artist #1, was quite satisfied with Kandinsky's progress, but thought that his colors were too bright. So Kandinsky spent a year working only in black and white, working on the shape. Maybe these studies brought Kandinsky to his idea that the color will be his main point of interest, and most of his paintings were non-figurative. In 1902, Kandinsky met Gabriel Munter, a young artist with similar interests who entered his summer painting class. They started to spend more time together and eventually became very close. They got engaged in a year, but officially Kandinsky was still married to his Russian wife Anna. This situation was upsetting for Gabrielle, but she stayed, as they both were happy to travel around Europe together to paint, and eventually they both entered a Blue Rider artist group. This group was inspired by the bright colors, They explored the relationship between color and line, studied the works on color theory by Goethe and works on theosophy by Rudolf Steiner. That was very fruitful years for Kandinsky. His paintings were getting more and more abstract, colors were more intense, and the composition more dynamic. And I suppose he really liked horses, as he had them in many paintings, or he was attracted by the shape, by the dynamic movement that can be expressed in colors. Quite often his works were inspired by music, and he named them like music pieces. Composition number 4 or impression. You still can try to identify some shapes in these paintings. Maybe there are people in the corner? What do you think? In 1914, with the outbreak of the First World War, Kandinsky had to get back to Russia, while Gabriel stayed in Switzerland. They never met again, because in Russia, Kandinsky met another woman, and he got married to Nina Andreevskaya in 1917. Later, his lawyer contacted Gabriel asking to send his possessions and his paintings, and Gabriel sent most of them, but she kept some of the paintings as a compensation of a moral damage. That was the time of big changes in Soviet Russia after the revolution. Kandinsky got involved in culture politics of a new Soviet state, and he was not alone in his searches of a new language of art. Some Russian artists of this time also explored abstract art, but in their own way. For example, L. Lisitsky, an important figure of Russian avant-garde, worked on geometrical composition, including typography, using basic colors, black, white, red. Kazimir Malevich, who was famous for his iconic black square, worked with pure bright colors too, but mostly with geometrical planes. This composition reminds me of Kandinsky's work, but more organized. Kandinsky was a part of government committee in the Department of Education. He helped to open 23 provincial museums. He worked as the first director in a newly established Institute of Artistic Culture in Moscow. But unfortunately, his expressive and intuitive manner did not match with the Soviet Union idea of a revolutionary art. Some of his opponents called his art an ugly spiritualism, and in 1922, the artist decided to leave Soviet Union to Germany. Kandinsky accepted an invitation to work and teach at the Bauhaus School in Weimar. He taught the course on design and painting, he wrote a book, A Point and Line to Plane. These years working for Bauhaus were very productive. Interesting fact, although his art was expressive and even chaotic, his outfit was always very formal and well thought. A suit with a tie. And yes, he painted in suit without wearing any kind of robe on top to protect the clothes from the paint. In his paintings, we can see more geometry, circles, squares, lines, arranged in a colorful composition. Unfortunately, Bauhaus School was closed in 1932 when National Socialists came to power in Germany, and a lot of experimental and non-figurative art was considered degenerate, and a lot of pieces of art were destroyed. Kandinsky moved to France and kept working, but eventually his art became more biomorphic with rounded shapes, reminding now of the cells or under the microscope pictures. He was still inspired by music, as he said,
"Music is the ultimate teacher. With few exceptions, music has been, for some centuries, the art which has devoted itself not to the reproduction of natural phenomena, but rather to the expression of the artist's soul in musical sound."
Василий Kandinsky died in 1944 in the age of 77 in France. He was not only an artist, but he was the leader of a whole new movement in art, an abstract art, and also a writer. observing his own feelings on colors, shapes, lines, he created a very subjective but a beautiful theory, combining color theory with psychology and spirituality.
That is truly a modern art. At first, I thought it was just a blast of colors without any system. But when you tell me that he actually painted after listening to some music, that makes sense to me, because I can see some rhythm and shapes. But it takes some time to understand this kind of art, because, it's not usual like pretty flowers or ladies. Not sure how I can use it in my works.
You can say that his art is modern, but keep in mind that Kandinsky lived almost 100 years ago. And creating abstract art is not that hard. I will show you some tips how you can work in this style. When I think of his paintings, I can see his ideas, finding reflection in many media. For example, I can definitely see his influence in the works of a Finnish felter, Karoliina Arvelomi. Or German textile artist Dagmar Binder. You can choose various shapes of your favorite colors and arrange them, creating your own impression, your own world. Kandinsky liked blue, as he considered it to be a celestial color, spiritual. Yellow was the color of earth, red of active energy. You can arrange your own color combinations that will make sense to you. Let's try to create a small art quilt that you can use as a placemat. I use off-white cotton for the background. Cut 2 pieces and attach fusible interface to one of the pieces that will be on top. Also, you will need scissors, a piece of soap and chalk, fabric markers, and a glue stick. I collected fabric of my favorite colors, shades of blue, purple. I find purple color to be very mysterious. A little bit of bright yellow, like a ray of sunshine, and lime green, fresh and joyful. I start with a big blue circle with a lighter blue on top. Pink and purple pieces will add some structure. Yellow piece is so shiny, and it asks for more natural shape, not a rectangle. I add one more piece of light purple, but put it diagonal to connect the circle to the structures in the other corner. Add in small squares of lime green for the accent. Now I have just one circle and other shapes are rectangles, so I want to give the big circle some support. I add his friends, little circles or ovals of various colors. After you are happy with the composition, you can start to glue it to the base with a glue stick. It's okay to move them around, looking for the best place. There are no mistakes here, you're playing. After everything is glued and secured, it's the time for stitching. I use a darning foot on my machine and a dark blue thread, as Kandinsky often outlined his shapes with dark colors. Also, I added some lines on top of the composition to add some movement. Next step. Put the other piece of the off-white cotton on top face to face and pin it. Stitch around the sides, leaving a little opening around 3 inches on one of the sides, so you can turn the whole piece inside out. Trim the corners, trim seam allowance, turn it inside out. Now it's the time to press your placemat and top stitch 2-3 millimeters from the edge to close the opening and make the piece nice and flat. I also stitched along the outer lines of my design to make the piece more solid. That is it. Your piece of abstract art to put your cup and crackers on. So, the basic idea of abstract art is arranging shapes of various colors. You can cut out a lot of pieces of various colors, play with them, move them, find the right composition for you. What if you have more squares, so the only circle will look lonely? Or many circles around a tiny rectangle? Are they overlapping, or there is space between them? Are the colors bright or dull? Any lines around to show the movement? So much to explore. So you can turn on your favorite music and create, have fun. So share your works and see you soon. Bye.